My mother was obviously very precious to us. She was 87 years old and she died very sadly on the 3rd of April of COVID. I was actually in isolation at the time. So when she was actually taken to hospital, I saw her go in the ambulance from my house, but I couldn't actually even hug her and say goodbye to her. So that was actually really, really difficult. The majority of us were not able to attend the burial. My son, he said he would set up a streaming of the burial. There were only 6 people who went to the burial, as was, the law or the guidance at that time. And fortunately he streamed it, so all of us in our different homes in England, in Pakistan, in Dubai, were able to see this all over the world actually. So again, being involved virtually, because we couldn't be there physically, helped that process as well. One of the things that was really difficult during this time was actually grieving on your own. My brothers lived 2 doors from me. My other brother lived, 3rd house down where my mother used to live, and we actually couldn't physically come together. So that made it very, very hard. I think in Islam, from a very early age, we're very much used to death is discussed a lot more openly. Just like you have the wake, quite often the bodies are brought to the house. Neighbours or some close relatives would be organising food in terms of for the family members and any visitors and so on. So normally the family don't have to worry about that aspect of it at all. For 2-3 days, people will bring food to the house, will serve it and so on, which I think is a very, very nice tradition and so on. In normal circumstances, the body would be taken to a mosque, and then people obviously would be aware the person's died. So there is obviously the prayer, the funeral prayer. The women then tend to come to the house, or sometimes they stay in the mosque, and the men would do the burial and then come back. After the 3rd day, quite often, and it actually varies slightly with cultures as well, a lot of Pakistanis would have what's called gul, which is on the 3rd day after the person's died. Again, there's sort of a gathering of people, reading of the Quran, more prayers for the person. To share stories really is very important. We talk about that person because that's part of the grieving process, isn't it? We have to talk about that individual, how you're feeling, how other people are sharing, how that person has influenced their lives and so on. Obviously with the lockdown, that bit hasn't happened. So there was no sort of 3-day get-together or 40-day get-together, but we did do it remotely with very close family members. And no matter how good remote is, that thing of physically hugging, crying on somebody's shoulder, holding hands, just hasn't happened. So it's made that process painful in some ways. Our faith has helped us a great deal because actually my mother was a very spiritual person. Actually engaging, with the Quran, with the prayers, the community is actually very, very important. So I think those things have certainly helped us. We've got to come out better human beings and better way of doing things perhaps. What have we learned? If we haven't learned anything out of COVID, what's the point of it?